Super Smash Bros. Is one of the most iconic fighting games, and that's because there's just so many different characters from so many different franchises, and it's really what makes this game unique. You know, at the time it was the first of its kind. It brought all these different characters from different, Nintendo series, and of course now we have all these different third-party characters and things like that. But one of my most favorite things to do with Smash is to look back at the previous games and kind of see which characters were planned, which ones were cut, and then the various reasons as to why they were cut. You know, when you look at games like the original Smash for Nintendo 64, there's characters like Dedede that were planned for the game, Bowser, Mewtwo, and obviously we got those, later on in different games, but they were originally planned for the original Smash. When you look at games like Brawl, we had characters like Dr. Mario, Mewtwo, and Roy that were supposed to return, and even newcomers like Toon Zelda and Toon Sheik, but eventually these characters were all scrapped for that game. So today we're going to be talking about the different characters that were planned for Smash Ultimate, whether they were just ideas at one time or whether, they were highly considered at some point. We're going to be talking about some characters that were supposed to be in the game, or at least thought of to be in the game, but didn't make the final roster slot. From what I was able to find, there's really about 5 characters that were planned that ended up not making the final cut. A lot of them ended up appearing in the game in some kind of form, some kind of way or another, but they just were not eventual, actual fighters for the game. So the first character we're going to talk about is one that was considered for the base game, and it's the one that I wanted the most out of this list, and that is Decidueye. It basically came down to Decidueye versus Incineroar, and obviously we know what happens. Incineroar made the game. Basically this Pokemon was, going to be the Gen 7 rep. It was between this or Incineroar, like I said, but the thing is, Sakurai wanted a unique fighter, and he felt that Incineroar would be able to bring more to the table. Now, I'm personally a big fan of Decidueye, and I think you could come up with a really unique moveset for this Pokemon, but I do kind of see where he's coming from. Picking Incineroar, more of the kind of like that wrestler type of fighter, that's something that we haven't really seen in Smash, surprisingly, so it definitely makes sense that he would choose, Incineroar over Decidueye. Decidueye, like I said, could be very unique, obviously. Right away, though, I guess one similarity you could draw would be like with Pit's arrows, for example. It is an archer, and then you have, characters like Pit, Dark Pit, that have these arrows, and, other characters that have arrows as well. Whereas Incineroar is kind of that wrestling fighter type, and that's something that we haven't really seen in Smash. Honestly, I think it would have been really cool if we got like a new version of a Pokemon trainer. That's, one of those things that I really want in the game, because I love the way Pokemon trainer works. I think it'd be so cool to see it for like another generation. But I think overall, it wasn't a bad choice at all. A lot of people do like Incineroar. Incineroar does feel unique, so it all definitely makes sense. And I am sad to see that Decidueye is not in the game, but like I said, it makes sense. The next character to talk about is Alucard from Castlevania. This is another character that almost made the game. Castlevania is a series that I'm not too familiar with. I know there are some big fans out there of this series. Me personally, I haven't played them, but maybe I'll do that later down the road. So basically, Sakurai felt that Alucard would be the more recognizable character from the series, and he decided to almost put him in the game, but he ended up going with Simon and Richter, obviously as Echo Fighters, and they're obviously both still playable. And obviously, Alucard is still in the game as an assist trophy, but it was almost reversed. We almost had Simon and Richter as the assist trophies and Alucard as the playable character. So it's interesting to see that he decided to kind of switch it up. And like I said, I'm not too familiar with Castlevania, so this doesn't bother me whatsoever, but if you have a strong opinion about this, definitely let me know in the comments. The next character is another character that was kind of sort of planned for the base game, and I was honestly surprised that we didn't get an ARMS character in the base game, but after kind of reading up about it, it kind of all makes sense to me. And that character is Ninjara. This is a character that, it was basically between Ninjara and Min Min for that DLC spot, but originally they did want to have a fighter from ARMS in the game. There just wasn't enough time with development, and ARMS came out later on, and by the time they were making these characters, there just wasn't enough time basically to have this character be in the base roster. And obviously, characters like Springman, Ribbon Girl, they were all, considered for this ARMS slot. When it came to the DLC, it was actually between Ninjara and Min Min, and it kind of seemed like Ninjara was kind of the way that it was going to go, but the game director for ARMS preferred Min Min, and so Min Min was actually picked over Ninjara, and it kind of makes sense to me. Min Min was always one of the more popular ARMS characters, and Ninjara wasn't anything special in my opinion. I wish they would have added like a different ARMS character, one a little bit more unique like Bit and Bark, or maybe even Master Mummy. That would have been cool to see another heavy, but like with these ranged arms. But overall, I think Min Min was the better choice between Min Min and Ninjara for sure. And honestly, what they could have done is something similar to Bowser Jr. with the Koopalings. They could have just had alternate costumes for different ARMS characters. Obviously, some of the ARMS characters are a little bit more unique and have different builds, but there are a lot of ARMS characters to choose from. A lot of them have the kind of similar builds, so I could have definitely seen alternate costumes for this character instead. And the next character is another one that's kind of sort of supposed to be in the base game. At least they wanted it to kind of be, and that is Rex from Xenoblade Chronicles 2. They did want to have a character from that game, kind of in the base game, but obviously wasn't ready in time. And then, you know, obviously we got Pyra and Mythra as DLC, and Sakurai really did want to incorporate Rex into the moveset and basically have him fight alongside Pyra and Mythra. Now, it's really interesting to read up on this because basically what he wanted was a character like basically how Pyra Mythra functions, except that, you know, every time you switch or, you know, you have one character out on the field, Rex is also out there, kind of similar to Ice Climbers, right? So he's kind of part of the move kit, except that you can also switch the other fighter between Pyra and Mythra, and it's just all one character all together. It basically would have been kind of like a 3-in-1 character in a way, but they just couldn't get it to work technically, so, you know, they had issues implementing it and getting it to work in the game. So they ended up just, you know, making him the little support character that shows up for taunts in the final smash and all that kind of stuff. And this would have been honestly really cool to see. I mean, obviously we've seen, you know, character switches, right? Like previous games, Zelda into Sheik and things like that. And then we've also seen, you know, how Pyra Mythra functions, how you're able to switch between the two. But we've never kind of seen like this 3-in-1 character like that. And the final character I'm going to talk about is another DLC character that almost happened. And that, of course, is our Tekken representative. We obviously got Kazuya, but Heihachi was another close choice that almost made the game. Now, both of these characters are obviously like the face of Tekken. They're very popular characters, of course, and Heihachi almost made it in over Kazuya. He ended up picking Kazuya, though, because he does have the Devil Gene, so there's obviously a little bit more that you can do with the moveset. Heihachi being more of just a kind of your standard fighter, I guess, if that kind of makes sense. Kazuya obviously has a lot more to him that you can do with the moveset, and you do see that with Kazuya's moveset in Smash right now. Sakurai actually kind of mentioned this during his original presentation of Kazuya. He kind of talked about, you know, what his thoughts were as far as the Tekken representative goes. So he did kind of mention it in that it's just been kind of a while, so I know some people have kind of forgotten about it. Now, for me personally, out of all, like, you know, typical fighting games, Tekken's the only one that I've really played at, like, a lot. I used to always play this as a kid growing up. It would have been cool to see characters like King or even Panda or even like Eddie in the game. I think those would have been really cool characters, but it obviously makes sense to kind of have the face of the game be in the game right now. And that's pretty much it. That's kind of the whole list that I have. There are a couple other characters that were kind of like briefly mentioned that I've seen, you know, like Slime in Dragon Quest. I saw that was kind of mentioned as a possibility. I know Steve had been planned for like the original base roster, but that obviously didn't happen. He ended up coming later as DLC. But other than that, those are kind of the only characters that I've seen that were supposed to like maybe be in the game, that were at some point, you know, seriously considered for the game and ended up not being in the game. If you enjoyed the video, make sure you leave a like and you subscribe to the channel. I definitely make a lot of videos about Smash, about Pokemon, all kinds of things like that. And like I said, there are a lot of characters that have been cut in past Smash games, so I can definitely cover those topics as well, because it's always interesting to go ahead and look back at those characters. I also stream on Twitch all the time, so you can go ahead and follow me over there if you want to catch me live and play some games against me. Other than that, that's going to be it for this video, so I'll catch you guys in the next one.